What's going on, guys? Algin here with FlytPath.com. Now, I hope you all had a very good holiday. I was actually able to take about a week off. I didn't do much shooting or editing at all. I'm sure you guys I did post on like Twitter and Instagram every once in a while, but just to kind of stay connected. But it kind of felt good to take a little break off, just kind of hang out with family, eat, do a little bit of house stuff, clean up the office a little bit, a lot of stuff going on, a lot of packages that came in. And I also got this one from Freewell Gear. This is their filter set for the DJI Mavic Mini. So let's talk about that real quick in this video. And if you guys are new to my channel, my name is Algin. I do a lot of drone tech tips, tutorials, and product reviews right here. So if that's something that interests you, please consider subscribing and also hitting that bell to be notified when I post new videos. Now, if you recently picked up your Mavic Mini and you see people posting about filters and things like that, a lot of people don't really understand what they do. And I have a ton of videos, and by ton, I mean like probably like 5 or 6 videos that I've done before in the past using filters, how to properly dial them in, how to set your exposure properly. Make sure you guys check out that playlist. I'll put it above as well as down below in the video description. I have a lot more detailed videos that talk about filters. So make sure you guys check those out if you want a little bit more, if you're still not clear after this video. Now, the main reason why you would want to add a filter onto the front of the lens of the camera is so that you can properly adjust the exposure. Now, I actually kind of hesitated on doing a filter review on the Mavic Mini because it's so limiting. And what I mean by that is when you're dealing with exposure, you're normally dealing with 3 different variables. You're dealing with the ISO, which is the light sensitivity on the actual camera sensor itself. You're dealing with shutter speed, which is how fast the shutter actually opens and closes. And then you also have the aperture, where here the aperture is a fixed 2.8. So you can't adjust the aperture. And the problem with the Mini is you can't adjust the shutter speed either in video, and you also can't adjust the ISO. So it's super limiting of what you can really do with it. The only thing you can adjust is the exposure compensation. So unlike some of the other drones where you might have a fixed aperture on like the Mavic Pro, or if you have the Mavic 2 Pro, you're able to adjust all those things manually. Here, you can't adjust those. The only time you can adjust shutter speed and ISO is when doing photography or photographs. And that's the reason why I say it's a little bit tricky, because you normally want to add filters onto your camera when you're shooting video to dial in your exposure properly. Here on the Mavic Mini, you're not able to do that. So when you do add filters to your camera, it's just still gonna do an auto exposure in camera. Now, how do you properly pick the right filter for the Mavic Mini camera, depending on your daylight? It is a little bit trickier because of the fact you can't manually adjust those settings in video. Now, if you wanted to use something like the 180-degree rule, which is basically telling you that if you're shooting at something like 4K at 30 frames a second, or here in this case, 2.7 at 30 frames a second. Now, 30 frames a second is the big number to know. So if you're shooting at 30 frames a second, or if you're more on the cinema side and want to shoot on a 24 frames a second, you want your shutter speed for video to normally be around double that. So if you're shooting at 24 frames a second, you're gonna wanna dial in your shutter speed at 50 frames a second. And if you're shooting at 30 frames a second, you want your shutter speed of the camera to be about 60. So it is kind of a game when you're putting on the filters, unless you have a little bit more experience, because you can't manually adjust that shutter speed on the Mavic Mini. You're just basically gonna be putting on filters to ideally slow down that shutter speed so that you get a little bit of natural motion blur. Now, the reason why you want to add that motion blur in your video is because if you shot with a camera like this in bright daylight, the shutter speed will be cranked up really, really high, like 1/1000th of a second. And now, if you have a really fast shutter, each one of those frames now is going to be really, really, really still, or really freeze frame. Now, if you put a sequential video together with a bunch of freeze frame images, everything looks kind of too crisp and too choppy. Now, the reason why you want to add the filters on there is because it slows down that shutter speed to give you a little bit of natural motion blur in that video. Now, I hope Freewell Gear does come out with longer exposure ones like ND1000 or ND2000 for the Mavic Mini, because of the fact that I can take advantage of using the manual settings on the photo side. With an ND64, it'll darken up the image a little bit, which means it'll allow me to open up my shutter. It's not gonna give me the best range, because now with an ND64, I still now have to go outside and use natural light. And if you wanna have it darker, you have to go out early in the morning or later in the evening or on a really, really overcast day. There's the sun right there, but it's got some decent cloud coverage to help me out here. Now the main reason why I don't want the sun to come out right now is because I only have an ND64. If I had a darker filter like an ND1000 or anything like that, then I'd be able to then shoot in brighter daylight because my ND filters would be stronger. But with an ND64, you're gonna need to have it to be an overcast day in order for you to get any long exposure photos with it. It's just not dark enough to shoot during the day. All right, so I'm here now at La Jolla. One of my favorite places to fly, but the only problem is the birds love the drones. And by love, it means they hate them. So what I wanna do here is, actually you can see right here, there is the Wind and Sea Hut. Really popular location here in La Jolla. What I want to do is get as much movement. There's a lot of rocks, a lot of water splashing, and that will give me a nice, silky movement if I can open up that shutter speed long enough. As you can see, the sun is right there, still behind the clouds, which is perfect. If the sun does come out, then I'm probably going to be in trouble because my filters aren't dark enough. Birds here in San Diego are known to attack the drones, so I'm not too excited about that. But let's try to set everything up now, get a quick flight, put it up there, snap some photos, see what we get, and hopefully come out with the Mavic. I have my Mavic Mini, got my controller, and here is the filters right here. Filters set right there, so let's put one of these on, and we're just gonna jump straight to the darkest one, which is the ND64. Here it is, ND64. Kind of hard to see, but there you go. Kind of hard to see, but there's little hooks in the back right there. Hooks on to that little vent, and then here's the ND64. So what I'm doing now is actually looking at my settings while I'm on the ground still. I don't even have to fly up just yet. I can dial in everything here because basically my drone is pointed right at the water. So I'm able to see exactly what my settings will be roughly. And what I'm getting right now is I'm able to expose for about a half a second to a quarter second, about a quarter second. What I'm gonna do now is keep my ISO as low as possible at 100. Let's get whatever I can get now, but that way you can at least get the idea of long exposure photos with it. This is the reason why you're going to want darker ND filters, darker than an ND64, so that you're not too dependent on that sun. You see the hut right here. I'm actually right above it, not too high up, only 150 feet up. Gives me a nice perspective. It does say a little bit strong wind warning, but honestly, like every time you fly the Mini, you get the strong wind warning. So let's see what we can get. I'm gonna fly around the coast. As of right now, my drone hasn't been attacked by birds, but knock on wood, it's only a matter of time here in San Diego. So the sun, as you can see, is coming up. Every time it does come up, I have to change my shutter speed now to be a little bit faster, which means I'm not gonna have super silky movements, but like I said, you kind of get what you can get. Now, as a quick comparison, I have the Mavic 2 with the freewheel gear. I have the ND2000 on here, so it's able to now give me a much darker of an image. That way I'm able to adjust my shutter speed and slow my shutter speed down, keep that thing open for like 1 to 2 seconds. And now, image quality wise, of course, this is far superior compared to the Mavic Mini, so this isn't an image comparison, but it is more of just showing you the difference of how long exposures change from something like a quarter of a second all the way up to something like this, where I should be able to get in the same sunlight probably like 1 to 2 seconds long. So not an image comparison, because of course this is going to be far superior, more of just showing you what the difference is with a quarter second exposure versus a half second versus a 1 to 2 second exposure. I'm able to do that with this one because I have a darker ND filter. Let me get a couple photos up with the Mavic 2 with the ND2000 from Freewheel Gear. All right, so the sun's pretty much out. Still a little bit overcast, but what I'll do now is do the video sample portion of it. I'm gonna fly down the coast with no filter, everything on auto, throw a filter on there. Well, everything is always on auto because you can't shoot anything else besides auto. And then I'm gonna throw a filter on there where I would assume to be the right strength if I just based off of what I'd be using for my other drones. ND filter is always gonna be beneficial to cut out a lot of that light. So if it's super bright, yes, an ND filter would definitely be necessary. It just sucks that I can't dial in exactly what I want my shutter speed and ISO to be. That way I'm able to have full control of it. You're not able to do that, unfortunately. So situations like this, where you're kind of in between what filter to use, you kind of have to just go based off of experience. But on a very bright day, you'll more likely always want to put on maybe like an ND16 or an ND32 just to cut down a lot of those highlights, which normally will happen on the Mavic Mini. Now, of course, the one question is, does this thing put it over that 250 gram mark? And surprisingly, it does not. These actually don't even weigh a gram. And normally when I've weighed my Mavic in the past, it'll weigh at like 248.5, maybe 249. But the great thing about this is that it doesn't even weigh a gram, so you can actually put this on there and shouldn't have any problems with it as far as it crossing that 250 mark. But I would, of course, base that on your experience. You guys make sure you guys test that out. But on my experience, that I've tested out both of them, the polarizer as well as the regular ND, and none of them put it over that 250 gram mark. And there it is, guys. That's the new ND filters by Freewell Gear for your DJI Mavic Mini. Like I mentioned earlier, make sure you guys check out that playlist. I have a bunch of other videos on there going in more details on how to properly expose your video or your photo using filters. Make sure you guys check out that playlist. I have about, I don't know, I think about 5 or 6 videos in there. So if you want a little bit more information, if this wasn't that clear for you, make sure you guys check out those videos and hopefully that'll clear things up. As always, if you guys got some value from this video, a big like would be much appreciated. And also don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell to be notified when I post new videos. This is Aljo Nastasio with FlytPath.com. I'll see you guys in the new year. Take care.